Hello and welcome to the show. This is the show for work, passion, life balance. It's the video podcast, and I am your host, Matthew Kalinsky. And of course, we are going to talk a little bit about how people manage their life and how do you maximize your life through interactions with people in relationships. And I am very honored to have as this guest today is Tony Meister. And one of the reasons why I'm excited for him is because he's a relationship that I had about 10 years ago. I met him and I haven't been in touch with him extremely amount. In fact, we just started text messaging a little bit ago. And I said, Tony, you have something going on that's really cool. And I want to talk a little bit about it. And I want you to be a guest on our show because when I wrote the book, Work, Passion, Life Balance, I had you in mind when it comes to when you know, that feeling you get when you really find what your passion is, you have that relationship with yourself and you finally start to self-actualize. I saw that in Tony and I said, Tony, you have to come on. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Tony Meister. Welcome to the show, here. Tony. Oh, it's so good to see you, man. You've been looking great over these last couple of years. What's going on?
10 years? When you say 10 years, I'm like, no, it can't be.
You know, you didn't have any gray hair in your beard when I first I met you, you know?
Yeah, it's the problem. You know, my wife's 10 years younger than I am.
Hey.
So I have to keep up somehow, you know? It's working.
Well, even when I met you 10 years ago, you had your life in order. You were, you know, a mature business guy running a business at that time. I was just a young guy, you know, right out of med school, and Carla and I started residency together.
That's right. That's
right.
right.
And you had your son at that time. How old is he now?
So he's 13, and yeah, he'll be 14 January 23rd.
Wow. Are you ready for teenage years?
Hey, I'm already into it. 13, trust me. He knows everything already.
They're so smart. I can't imagine being a kid, especially 13 at nowadays. I mean,
yeah. And he's pretty precocious. He has my looks.
Oh, well, then he's going to be a stud, I think.
Well, you know what I mean by that. Carla's a smart one.
Uh-huh. She's got the brains.
So yeah, he's precocious and it's a lot of fun. He's really a good kid. Thanks for asking.
Is he in high school now or is he freshman?
He is. Yep, he is, and he loves, you know, he really truly he does have a mind like mom. He does love science. He's got that creative part that I think he got from his dad. But he loves life, and yeah, he's doing really good. We couldn't be happier.
That, you know, the mix between creative and you know, scientific, I think is going to be the next wave of smart people. You know, we have this whole EQ system, IQ, EQ. I think there's going to be a third Q, and it's going to be that mix between creative and scientific. Because, you know, especially with all these personal brandings going on, marketing is important to whatever you do, whether you're a scientific person or not.
Yeah, the emotional quotient. I mean, you know, that comes into play in a lot of areas when you're dealing with people. But it's actually a misnomer. I don't know if you knew that, you know, when they talk about right brain, left brain, do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
I think
none taught me that in like 8th grade.
And you know what? It's actually not true, because then we believe that there's this dichotomy, and then we fit this mold and we say, okay, well, I'm just scientific and analytical. I can't be creative. So you guys are physicians along, you know, I say you guys with my wife. And she is one of the most creative individuals I know. She is funny. She's an introvert without a doubt.
Yeah.
But she's creative. So I think that you know, I'm glad that was dispelled quite a while ago, that there is not don't box yourself into the right brain, left brain area.
I agree. You know, I never, you know, understood marketing, but it's something everybody can learn, and I'm learning as I go, you know, and I'm just kind of going it and doing it. And I think just like I was naturally stronger in some subjects and weaker in others, you can learn all of them. You can grow in any direction you want. And I think, you know, with YouTube, teaching in a very visual manner, in marketing products, talking in a very different sense. I think everybody can learn now, and you don't just have to sit in front of a teacher and learn or read about it. You can visualize it in many different ways.
Yeah, that's the beauty about what you mentioned with YouTube. I mean, there's a difference between a skill and an ability. And when you find what you love to do, you tend to have an ability or almost a talent, or call it a gift.
Yeah.
A skill is something you develop. An
Yep.
ability is what you have innately. And when you get those two married together and you find out what your passion is and what your ability is,
Yeah.
and then you turn it into a skill and you work hard at it, it's endless.
Yeah. That's
It's
it. You're absolutely right. I think there's a lot of components to it that really, when people say, oh, follow your passion, and then other people are like, well, your passion isn't going to get you. I think there's a whole lot of things that were said in the 80s and 90s that just that just have been transitioning as we go. And I think millennials have made a lot of change. I never really fit the millennial because I think my constituents in millennial we're always talking about work-life balance. And that's why I was like, I don't fit into this. I want to work. I can work 80 hours a week. I had to do it in residency while I was running my businesses. And so that's much more of like a Generation X in terms of the work ethic, Generation Y in terms of increased passion. So it's like, a whole bunch of changes going on.
Yeah,
So,
I admire. I have to just interject when you talked about med school and what you guys did in residency and Q4 call. And for those that don't know what Q4 call is, I mean, basically every 4 days you're working these shifts that are, I mean, up to what, 30, 32 hours?
When I was a resident, we did 32 hours.
I mean, and I could not believe what you guys were doing. You guys are like the intellectual Navy SEALs out there. I mean, you talk about how far can you stretch the human capability, and I was just amazed. But you can only do that, I think, at a certain stage in your life when you're young. And I'm going to throw this back at you. Did that really change you? Did you find out, wow, I'm actually capable of doing this? What was that experience like for you?
Oh yeah, no, and are you familiar with David Goggins?
No.
David Goggins talks about hardening the mind, and he believes that the mind protects the body. And so the mind is like a governor, and at 40%, it kind of starts shutting off the body and tells you to go to sleep or to quit running or whatever you're doing. And so his whole message is about turning off the governor, about superseding what your mind limits you and to exceed. And so for me, I started my first business in undergrad, but I started USA Staffing, the business I have now, in residency at the end of med school. And so for me, it was running a business and doing the 80 hours. It was just hardening my mind. I can learn so much faster because of that period in my life.
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially it's going beyond what the limitations, the 40%, it's going beyond that is what hardening.
Yeah. He's got some great kind of quotes, and his sound bites are really fascinating because he talks about, he's a guy who's like, I'm just going to run 100 miles today and see how I do. So he ran like 24 hours a day, tried to get to 100 miles, and like he did it. He's like, I just overseeded my mind. My body can do it. He broke the world, the record for pull-ups. It took him 4 times. It was like some crazy number of pull-ups, like 4,000 pull-ups or more. I don't even know, but something crazy. I mean, more than 10. I'm like, wow, you're impressive.
Yeah. That's awesome.
But yeah, I think that there was it's a war type thing, and I'm sure you were a yeoman. I remember.
Yeah, I was on an aircraft carrier.
Yeah. So, I mean, just anytime you're going into that structured approach to life where you have a structure, you build on a foundation. And I think that for us, and for me anyway, I'm speaking, it really created a foundation that I can do way more than I ever thought I could.
Yeah, I was so grateful for that military experience because it was very similar to what you went through. I got stretched in a lot of ways. Boot camp is not easy by any means.
Yeah.
And, I think of a recent article that I had read, and it's from a Commander Navy SEAL who talked about one of the most important things that you should do is make your bed.
I saw that video. Yeah.
Have you seen that? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so when you talk about that structure, you talk about that routine. I mean, I look at life like we go into battle every single day.
Yeah.
Just for instance, today I ran into just a number of different obstacles. I like to create a lot of content on social, and I created this video where I'm talking for a long time. I'm outside, everything's set, and sure enough, like the audio went on me. And it was like the perfect, it's like, oh man, now I got to go back, and it's a battle. And what a routine does
Yes.
in the morning,
checklists.
It is boom, boom, boom. It gets us ready for that day. It creates a momentum. It sounds really simple just to make your bed, but you make your bed and you've accomplished something. You bring that into the day, and it becomes a habit.
Yep.
And when you start making habits like that, you don't even think about it anymore, because it's not this arduous thing. Whatever that habit may be, whether it's exercise, whether it's reading and getting yourself educated on something. So I think that's really true what you talk about. And for you, med school was a stretch. It kind of laid that foundation. For me, it was a couple things. It was boot camp for sure. The military experience. You talk about being a yeoman. And then, going to college, getting a business degree.
Yeah. And so you took over your parents or your dad's business, right? Or you were running it with him initially?
No, not at all. Except actually what happened was, I'll just tell a little bit of my story.
Yeah. Cause before you jump into it, the coolest thing that I saw over the past few years without keeping in touch with you is all of a sudden, like 2 years ago, you just started like blooming on social media and with these videos that were just amazing. You blew me away. And I can tell through your work, through your artwork, that there was a new glimmer of something in you, Tony. And it was just amazing. And you just kind of got better and brighter and brighter. And now, it's amazing. And I really feel that is really your self-actualization, your self, satisfaction really growing. And I haven't even, talked with you much, but I could tell just from your work that it's doing. So let's hear your story a little bit. What's going on? Tell us what happened.
Yeah. So when I was a kid, my dad had an advertising agency, and he was actually involved with a lot of different agencies before he started his own. So you probably don't remember Johnny Carson, but he was the original Tonight Show host.
I know of him.
So my dad was actually on the set with Johnny Carson. My dad traveled with Evel Knievel, who's the daredevil that, he traveled all over, and he's the guy that jumped the canyon, the Snake River Canyon. And I mean, Al Hurt, who is a trumpet player, he's known for doing the triple tongue. Just all these different movie stars. I mean, it was just an amazing thing to view as a kid. I sat on I Dream of Jeannie's lap. I dreamed of Jeannie as Barbara Eden. I was a kid, and I sat on her lap, and I remember I asked her the question, how do you do all those magic tricks? And she looked down at me, and she had this real serious look. And she said, I can't tell. It's a secret. And I was like, oh, wow. So here I grow up with this experience with my father. And I had a passion for what he did. It was the creativity. It was everything about it that I loved. And again, I talk about the difference between a skill and an ability. Well, the ability that I have is very similar to my dad's. I'm very creative. I'm an artist. I'm a musician. I'll probably pull out a unique instrument at the end of the
I love it.
show here. And however, what happened was my dad didn't really manage things well with the marriage, and things went downhill. And they had a divorce. My parents got divorced when I was 7, and it changed everything. And I think it did something. It did a lot of things for me. And eventually, I'm bouncing from living with my mom and custody and my dad, and he just wasn't there. And pretty soon, from kindergarten to 12th grade, actually, I went to 9 different schools, and I moved 12 times on average from apartment to apartment. And I think, after the military, going to school, I ended up getting an IT career, and I liked it. There were facets of it that I really did like. And I don't know if you can relate to this, because you've done, many different things, from jumping from, being a
Yeah.
physician, and I'm sure you're still dabbling in some of that, but what you're
Yep.
doing now, I found that that was not my main thing. And the reason that I think that I kind of steered towards IT was almost that it was the thing that I was supposed to do, Matt.
I
I
hear
was
you. You're preaching to
and
the
I was
choir.
and I was very successful at it,
Yeah.
but it was arduous. It was hard to be successful. And don't get me wrong, you mentioned earlier that people, if they pursue their passion, that you hear that as a cliche, pursue your
Yeah.
passion.
Right.
And it isn't just a magic wand. It takes a lot of work, and you might have to do things that you don't like to do to get to that place where you're really in your groove, right? But in the case of what I worked at GE Healthcare in IT, and so I managed a pretty large group of technicians and engineers. It got up to 30. I was hiring, firing, doing all of that, but I did not love it, and I didn't have a passion. And what I learned is that everything that happened to me in childhood, I think subliminally, it was like, yeah, I don't want to be like dad.
Yeah.
I don't want to. And I'm going to tell you, the biggest thing that allowed me to turn the corner was forgiveness.
Really?
Yep.
When
I,
when did
I
that happen? Do you have a specific moment, like in time, where you can like remember vividly
yeah.
that moment?
Yeah, it
What
was
year?
this I'd never had anything happen like this. You don't hear about this often. It was very unusual, but I was in a prayer meeting, and this
Really?
one lady said, God wants to do an inner healing in your life, and you're going to forgive someone.
Really?
And I remember just being like, this is kind of strange. I've never heard this before. I grew up a Catholic in
Sure.
Oconomowoc, Wisconsin, going to church, and like nothing like this is. But I'll tell if it's real, okay. So I literally at that time, I went home. My dad was there. I was young. I just got my license, and I said, Dad, I had this experience. This lady said I was supposed to forgive someone. It's kind of strange. Can I use the car? I'm going to go just pray about this.
Okay.
And I did. And I had this impression of my mother. And, she had actually passed away at this time. So my mom had died. And so
Okay.
that just added fuel to the fire
Sure.
and to the
Complicates
angst.
it.
And I was so jaded, Matt.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, this just impression of my mom came to me. And I realized that I needed to forgive my dad. And I'm
Yeah.
telling you, when I came back, I drove back. And, it's funny. I tell my dad I'm supposed to forgive someone. Well, here it was him. Isn't that ironic? And the main thing that I got, one of the interesting things I should say is after I told him, I said, Dad, I just forgive you for everything that you did with, to Mom and with our family. He said, I've been dealing with that myself.
Huh.
And he didn't give me the response that I thought I needed. Like, thank you for, it was
Yeah.
just, I dealt with that. But what I
Yeah.
realized with the forgiveness was not for him. It was for me.
Yep.
And
That's
that, when you're
Yep.
in unforgiveness and you're in vindictiveness, it's kind of like drinking poison and waiting for someone else to die.
Yeah. That's a perfect way to say it.
And I realized that, we all make mistakes.
Yeah.
And once I was free from that, my relationship got so much better with my father. And then I'll fast forward over a lot of stuff, but IT was great. I did really, I did good in the career, but eventually I had the opportunity to start my own thing, which was Chameleon. And so I can understand why you would relate to Chameleon. My dad had Chameleon advertising. So
Okay.
generally you would think, oh yeah,
Well,
he
I
took
knew that
over.
and you started that in 2018, was it? Or when did you start Chameleon?
Well, it was circa like 2015. I
Okay.
was still doing some IT stuff, and
Okay.
Carla was, gosh, where were you guys back then? 2015. I think she
I
was
was in
just,
fellowship. I was in pulmonary
yeah,
fellowship.
you were fellowship, so she was just starting to practice. And I said, honey, I think I'm supposed to start my own thing. And it was ironic because I was doing video scribe whiteboard animation.
Yeah, I remember that.
And it's like, so here I'm in my basement drawing cartoons and telling my wife I'm going to start a business. It's like, trust me, it's going to work out really fine.
Well, you got her through med school and residency. Now it's her turn. You get to do your exploring, right?
That's right.
That's how
I had a
mutual
chance to.
beneficial relationships work. Give and
That's
take.
right. That's right. We had a chance. I took her to Italy. Matter of fact, this is from Tuscany, Siena.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful.
But yeah, it was a little bit of a stepping back so that she could do what, again going back to what her ability, turning that into a skill
Yeah.
and do what her calling is.
So I talk a lot about in the book about all relationships can be classified into three types of relationships. There's the selfless relationships, which most people consider the work, and that's you're giving up time, energy, and really, emotion for either a paycheck or for other purposes. You can work on your relationship with your father. You can work on your relationship with your son. You can work on your marriage. Work is not just a paycheck. But then there's also two more categories of relationships. One is the mutually beneficial relationship, which it sounds like most people have in terms of what they consider life. You have good times, you have some fights, it's mutually beneficial, you work on it, but it's life. It's what really people, really remember. I think the thing that most people forget is that there's a relationship with yourself. And that's, I believe, one of the most important aspects or most important relationships you need to have. And during this time of COVID, people didn't have to go to work. They were let go, or they were working from home, or they had just more time on their hands, and they didn't like dealing with themselves. In a perfect, like in a different version of this world, people would be like, yes, I get to garden, or I get to play music, or I get to do what I love to do because I know what I love to do. I have that relationship with me. I think what in this reality, what happened was that people have been ignoring themselves. And so then they didn't have the distraction of work. You didn't have the distraction of mutually beneficial relationships. The only relationships that were left was the one with you personally. And I think a lot of people, that's made a lot of people depressed, anxious, and sad, is that they didn't know what to do with themselves. They didn't have that relationship. And I think that it doesn't matter what it is. You just have to acknowledge it, and you have to accept it. And so the difference between a hobby and a passion, for me, a hobby is something you would do if you were bored, or if you weren't really, you do it and you have fun. To me, somebody is like, if you love gardening, you're going to be watching YouTube pictures. You're going to have a book about gardening. You're going to try it. You're going to work on it on the weekends. That's a relationship with yourself that you don't need anybody else with. You can do it by yourself. You can learn by yourself. It fills you up with energy. And if people aren't filling themselves up with energy, they can't give it away on the relationships they're working on.
Right.
And so I'm wondering if given that definition of relationships, how did you experience your balanced life during this 2015-16 period where you were like leaving your paycheck to probably investing some money into your business? And how was that experience for you, kind of trying to get life satisfaction better?
Well, the simple answer is passion. It was a fire in me to do what I love to do that really had been stifled for many years when I was at GE Healthcare. And because I just did one facet of what I'm good at. I'm very analytical and I'm very detailed. That helps when you're telling a story, when you're editing video. You have to be very detailed. Matter of fact, I tell my son what they told me in boot camp, that the main motto was pay attention to detail. That's what they told us in boot camp. And so I had that facet, but it was the creative outlet that I think I was hungering for years. And again, it goes back to that passion.
Yeah.
But when you talk about, just where people are right now with COVID, it does force us to look at ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I think identity is a big topic. I think,
oh yeah.
If we identify with our achievements, we can get into trouble. I think that I should say really, if we put our value in what we're accomplishing, I think we can get in trouble. So if I'm doing really well in a certain area, and maybe it's growing my business, and that makes me feel really good. And there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
However, if something like COVID hits and then that doesn't happen, I'm in a place where if I'm married to those achievements,
Yep.
immediately I'm thinking, oh no, I am inadequate.
Mhm.
I can't do this. I can't do that.
Yeah. Well,
So
you're defining yourself based on the accomplishments instead of defining yourself based on your relationship with yourself.
yeah. And we're human beings. We're not human doings.
That's true.
And what we do comes out of that identity. That's why that's
Yeah.
really important, because it comes out of us as we think we are.
Yeah.
And I love the definition. There are many definitions of success. One of them I really like is self-satisfaction, or I should say peace of mind, that is a direct result of self-satisfaction, knowing that you've done the best you can do to be the best you are capable of becoming.
Wow. Where's your drum? Where's your bingo? You need a little drum there or something,
But it's true when you think about that. And we perform our best when we're at peace, when we're not striving, when we're not, trying to. I mean, we need all that. You've got to have energy to produce. But so I think what you brought up is really good. And just to go back to what you had asked, yeah, that was really the turning point. It was finding my passion and then really going at it.
Well, I think I don't know if you've read this yet, but there's a whole chapter on acknowledging your passion. I think probably what happened is that you gave yourself the permission to acknowledge your passion. And once you acknowledge it and you tell others about it, that's when the magic happens. And for me, that's when it happens for me. So I still practice. I still see patients. I'm working
awesome.
over nights and weekends because I have that. Patient care is definitely something that lights me up. It fills me up with energy. Yeah. But entrepreneurship does too. And so initially, from my experience, I started the business with the whole purpose of paying for med school. I came from an upper middle class family. I had a lot of great things growing up, but we didn't have the amount of money it takes to pay for med school. And so my whole purpose in starting my first business was to pay for med school. And 8 years later, I finally broke even with the investments I made. But that beside the point, what happened was in 2000.
But just to say that is a lot. That is an accomplishment. I mean, we were battling that whole debt thing too. That's a lot.
Yeah,
it's the figures,
it's crazy.
But they're like, woo.
Yeah.
So that should never be downplayed. I mean, that's a huge accomplishment just to get out of debt.
Yeah. Well, 2014 was the change. I said, okay, I'm going to focus on doctoring. I'm going to step away from the business. And it was like a piece of me was like torn out. I was like, I wasn't able to live. I was like depressed and I was like not finding my way. I was probably a not as good of a doctor without that in my life. And think about that. I removed something so I can focus on being a doctor. And I wasn't as good of a doctor because I wasn't being filled up with the energy of the passion that I had with entrepreneurship. And patient care gives me energy too, but caring for patients, that's work. You have to be filled up in order to give time, energy, emotion to your patients. And if you're running on empty, you're not going to be a good doctor or a good husband or a good anything, And so I think that it's this kind of overlap. And so the overlap for me is really managing relationships to optimize efficiency. And so what do I mean by that? If you can acknowledge, like, you're a you're a creative person and you have mutually beneficial friends, the efficiency part is that if you have mutually beneficial friends that are also creative, you can actually have multiples of abundance in your life when it comes to energy, because you have a common relationship, but also the relationship has a common idea of creativity or passion or marketing or whatever that is for you.
Right.
It's very similar to, like, if you love gardening. I go back to gardening because it's kind of, everybody knows the idea of it, but like if mutually beneficial friends also enjoy gardening together, they can magnify their time, magnify the quality of life and really life satisfaction significantly with
Yeah.
with those relationships.
Yeah, there's a book. Marcus Buckingham wrote a book. He worked with the Gallup poll, and one of the things that he discovered were there were several questions that correlated directly to the profitability of a company, and these questions were asked of employees.
Oh,
And depending on how they scored, whether they rated it high or low, really depended on how well that company was doing. And they interviewed 80,000 different managers to come to some of these conclusions.
wow.
And what they found out was one of the questions was, do I work with a friend? And do I know what, number one, what the vision of the company is? And number two, is what I'm doing directly related to the fulfillment of that vision? So here you have this kind of a mutually beneficial thing. You're working, when you work with friends, when you do this, you achieve this this collective genius that is essentially a synergy, because you look at the sum of what the contribution of one individual and the other one, and you put them together. It's just exponential.
Oh yeah. I have an awesome team. I'm actually at the USA Staffing office right now, and there's 5 other employees that work on this corporate office. Man, the synergy is just outstanding. It's just amazing. There's so much firepower, and everybody helps each other, and there's self-actualization just every day, every week, every month, just growth and growth. And it's just really cool to see.
But it was a grind to get there. It was, you talked about how you hit a low.
Oh yeah.
Everybody hits a low. And that's where I think we need to realize as entrepreneurs that we can never give up. I mean, it may look so grim, and things may implode on us, but it's
like every other month, man. Every other month, a customer quits or this or that or complain. Nothing you can do, nothing you can control. But
you just talking about the employees and the teamwork and the synergy and everything. You light up. It's worth it. In the end. When you know that it's worth it, you're going to do it.
Well, the quality of the end result, the products, the services, it's going to be better if you can have that. And I'm sure it's very similar to your company as well, where your product, your deliverables are phenomenal. I mean, they're just keep on getting better and better. And I think it's probably because you got something special going on with your team as well and yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. Yep.
Yeah. So, all right, Tony. Well, I want to respect your time. Is it okay if I just show everybody your website real quick?
Yeah.
Okay. I have it up here. I just, I know this wasn't a business call, but you're proud of your business as well. So I, might as well just share it's chameleoncommunications.net, right?
That's correct.
All right. Pulling it up right here.
Thank you. So if you scroll down just a little bit, this is, I tell you, one of the things that just a little tidbit on brand communication. When you have someone go to your website, the last thing you want is a lot of confusion. And our minds are just geared towards, okay, what is easy to understand? If this is too complex, I'm moving on. There's a great book by Seth Godin. He's a marketing guru.
Okay. I've heard that name actually.
Yeah. And he calls it the big red fez. And he equates someone going to your website as though you got to treat them like a monkey because their attention span is like a gnat,
I think most people's attention span is very short these days.
Yeah. So I just say that to say that, you try to make it simple, connect with your brand, engage with your prospects, and convert new clients. That's what we do. So, this was kind of a serendipitous thing that you throw up my website. I appreciate that.
Hey, we talked a little bit about your business. Wanted to give you a shout out. So there you go. Shout out to Tony and Chameleon Communications. Well, Tony, is there anything else you'd like to say? Otherwise I'll let you go from the show.
No, I'm so grateful you reached out. It's great catching up with you and hearing more about, even your story. And I look forward to us syncing up even more.
Absolutely. Very good. Well, thanks for stopping by. I'm going to let you go out and I'm going to close out the show. Well, there you have it. Tony Meister. we honestly haven't talked for over 5 years, and we just kind of texted, and really that was just a great way to connect. And I'm just so impressed with Tony, from where he was 10 years ago to where he is today. That spark, that light, really just that fire in his belly is definitely coming through in a lot of different ways. And I wish Tony the best in everything that he does, but it's just cool to see how people balance their life and how they manage work and passion and life, and what the philosophy are that they use to really maximize their life satisfaction. So next week, we're going to have our next show. Continue to follow us on our Facebook, our Instagram, and more importantly, my website, MatthewKalinsky.com. You can order your book there if you'd like. Otherwise, you can follow me on social media. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.